The Shadow Wolf. Once upon a time, deep in the heart of the ancient forest, there lived a wolf unlike any other. He was known as the Shadow Wolf, for his fur was darker than the deepest night, and his eyes gleamed with the mysterious silver light of the moon. Legends about him whispered through the trees, telling of his wisdom, courage, and the strange magical bond he shared with the shadows themselves. The Shadow Wolf was feared by some and revered by others. But what set him apart was his insatiable curiosity about the world beyond the forest. While most wolves only cared about hunting and survival, the Shadow Wolf yearned for knowledge, especially about the humans who lived on the outskirts of the forest. They spoke a strange language he couldn't understand, but their words intrigued him. One day, as the Shadow Wolf roamed the forest, he heard a faint cry near the riverbank. He followed the sound and discovered a young girl sitting on a rock, clutching her ankle. Her name was Lily, and she had twisted her foot while gathering herbs for her grandmother. Though she was frightened at first, she soon realized the Shadow Wolf meant her no harm. Lily spoke softly, her words flowing like a melody. The Shadow Wolf couldn't understand her, but her tone was kind. Carefully, he nudged her onto his back and carried her to the edge of the forest, where her family was searching for her. They were startled at the sight of the dark wolf, but when Lily explained how he had helped her, they nodded in gratitude. From that day on, Lily visited the forest every afternoon. She brought small gifts for the Shadow Wolf: fruits, bread, and even a soft scarf to keep him warm in the winter. In return, the Shadow Wolf accompanied her on her walks, protecting her from harm. One day Lily brought a book with her. She held it up and said, "Book." The Shadow Wolf tilted his head, curious. Lily opened it and pointed to a picture of a tree. "Tree," she said. The Shadow Wolf looked at the picture, then at a nearby tree. Slowly he began to understand. Day by day Lily taught him words. She showed him pictures and objects, repeating their names until he could associate the sounds with their meanings. It wasn't easy, but the Shadow Wolf was determined. He practiced the words in his mind and listened carefully whenever Lily spoke. As time passed, the Shadow Wolf began to recognize patterns in the language. He understood how words formed sentences and how those sentences conveyed meaning. He couldn't speak like humans, but he could understand them. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, the Shadow Wolf heard something troubling. From his vantage point on a hill, he saw a group of hunters entering the forest. They carried weapons and spoke in harsh tones, planning to capture the wolves that lived there. The Shadow Wolf knew he had to act quickly. He ran to Lily's home and howled outside her window. Startled, Lily opened the door. The Shadow Wolf gestured with his head, urging her to follow. Understanding his urgency, Lily grabbed a lantern and followed him into the forest. When they reached the heart of the woods, the Shadow Wolf used his growing knowledge of human words to communicate. He pawed the ground and said, "Danger. Hurt wolves." Lily's eyes widened in realization. "I'll stop them," she said. She ran toward the hunters, calling out to them, "Stop. These woods are protected." The hunters paused, surprised to see a young girl in the middle of the forest. Lily explained that the wolves were not dangerous and were essential to the forest's balance. She spoke with such conviction that the hunters hesitated, but one hunter sneered. "Why should we care? They're just animals." At that moment, the Shadow Wolf stepped forward. His dark form emerged from the shadows, and his silver eyes locked onto the hunters. Though he didn't speak, His presence conveyed a powerful message. Lily added, "This wolf saved me. They're not our enemies, they're our allies." The hunters muttered among themselves. Finally the leader nodded. "We'll leave them be, but only because of you, young lady." As the hunters left, Lily turned to the Shadow Wolf and smiled. "You've learned so much, Shadow. You saved your pack." The Shadow Wolf nodded, his heart swelling with pride. He had not only learned a new language but also used it to protect those he cared about. From that day on, the forest and the humans coexisted peacefully. The Shadow Wolf continued to learn, teaching his pack about the humans and their ways. And though he remained a creature of the shadows, his heart shone brightly, a beacon of wisdom and kindness.